So welcome, thanks for coming. This is like the biggest, writing support community we've ever had at UNE, and so I'm really excited about what we're going to do this year. We're coming off a really good year in writing support. One of the things I like about what happens here is that we actually assess writing support, and we know what's happening with the 011 students because we actually separate them out in our portfolio assessment. We know who they are. We actually assessed all of them this time, and so we have a pretty good picture of the impact of what we do in our tutoring sessions on our 011 students. And the great news is that they're virtually indistinguishable from the other people who take 110 by themselves on all 5 of the measures that we look at in terms of writing process, in terms of integrating their sources with others, all the learning objectives that we have. And there are no statistically significant differences between the performances of our students with the ones who have it. And good work, thank you. Right, we're doing really great stuff.
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case, forever. And we'll talk a little bit at the beginning of our meeting about who our mainstreaming students are and who our stretch students are, because there's 2 populations in SAS 011. But we're talking about developmental writers here, people who otherwise might have struggled pretty significantly in in English 110. So I think we should start. I know you've introduced yourselves a little bit, but maybe we can continue that too. Maybe say who you are, talk a little bit about what your tutoring experience has been, and for those of you who've been tutoring here before, maybe talk a little bit about what you think is interesting or different, or about tutoring when you have 14 sessions rather than 1 with them. So Chad, do you want to start?
Yeah, Chad Walls, and I teach comp here, and last year was my first year of tutoring, and I remember getting into it not really kind of understood what it was about, but I really got it once I started doing it, and I figured out what was going on. And I think I found that, apart from tutoring, the conversations you're having with students are also about time management, about how they're feeling on campus, about how they're getting along. And so, I used to start every tutoring session with a continued conversation, like, I know you're working at Starbucks, and how do you manage your time? How are you able to do this? And I thought that was a really helpful way of sort of segueing into what they actually have to do. But so it's kind of, I hate to use the word, but I sort of learned to approach it like holistically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, part of their issues with writing has to do with their own confidence in their own ability to manage themselves. So that goes along with the content as well. So
Great.
yeah.
I'm Jack Moore, and I started here in the fall of 05. And this year is the first year I've been teaching the
Writing tutorial.
Writing tutorial.
Call it.
Yeah, and doing tutoring with my own students, and then last year, maybe the year before, started doing with what are now the 011 students. Over the years, I've seen things change quite a bit, and I think everybody's much more in tune as a group with what we're doing than when I first started. There was John Doherty and I, 2 of us, and then Megan came, and so the group has expanded exponentially over the time we've been here. I think Chad expressed some of the ideas that are really significant in the tutoring process. And that is, part of what we're trying to do is help students who've been kind of, for want of a better word, downtrodden. They've all had relatively negative or unpleasant situations with their previous experiences, and then the test out stuff kind of further dampens their confidence. So a lot of what we need, or a lot of what I feel we need to do is kind of bring them along slowly and be careful of beating them up. To point out that, we see some things here that you can do better, but here's what we can do, and try to work hard to find whatever strengths they have and then try to expand those so that they just generally get better as the semester goes along. I've always been kind of, I guess you could call it soft. But they just need guidance, and a lot of them have not gotten it. And some of the things you'll hear coming out of their mouths about, well, my English teacher in high school said this, will just boggle your mind. And so part of what we do. I don't know how many of you are using the, although I guess that's the book we're thinking of using, that we are going to use for the stretch class. But there's a section in there on unlearning, and it talks about, disabusing them of the notion that the 5-paragraph essay is the way to go, and some other things along those lines. And I think that's kind of a really good base to begin with for our work as tutors.
Thanks.
My name is Allie Rogers. This is my first semester here in the Tutoring Center and teaching 110. It's my first fall actually in the state of Maine, so I have much to learn, I think. My tutoring background started with teaching advanced high school students. I would teach AP exam prep, SAT prep, and then in graduate school I kind of went to these academic center type tutoring. And I guess my approach is really trying to get rid of the barrier that exists. That mentality where, say you're in a bookstore, you don't want to go ask the person behind the desk, you're going to ask someone in the stacks for help. That's kind of my approach to kind of break down the barrier, make it approachable. And so I'm hoping to kind of bring that in and learn what this center is all about.
I'm Megan, and I've been here, I guess, since fall of 2006 now. So I've seen a lot of changes in the program, and I feel like right now we're at the best place we've ever been in terms of serving the students in, as Chad was saying, a really holistic way that really meets them where they're at and makes all of this work that they do and that we all do really approachable. And the model that we have allows us to spend that time with them in a way that lets us just do so much. Like we can model certain behaviors, we can use scaffolding, we can return to these things, and just helping them understand that like this writing thing is a thing, it's a discourse, and we all of us are probably writers, and we all have different ways that we have to relearn how to write all the time. And so like that process of doing that is part of what, I think we're helping them learn. We're all doing this all the time. It's not just, how to write, you don't. So it's just some of those ways of thinking about it, and the practice that goes along with that way of thinking about it is what we have the luxury of being able to do in these meetings. So it's really helpful, I think.
My name's Kim. My background is ESL and some developmental, preparing students for college in ESL. It's a lot of fun seeing people from different backgrounds and how they write, and used to do a lot of, at a lower level, where's your favorite place? So I know just about any place in the world where to go for a good place. Japan, Thailand, whatever. I've been tutoring at York County Community College, and I do some community-based ESL as well.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm sorry I was late. Sorry to have missed your earlier stuff. I'm Jen Janako. I have been here at uni for 8 years now, mostly teaching in English 110. Last year, I started as an SAS 011 tutor, and really kind of, I feel like in a lot of ways it helped round out my understanding of English 110 in a way that I couldn't have gotten at as being an English 110 professor. Seeing the students from the side of how they view the experience of 110 has really changed the way I'm approaching 110, and also just students in general. So my background was actually as a middle school teacher years ago. So coming into the college scene was, brought a lot of that with me, which in some ways I think has helped students because I can kind of bring it down to a level that for some of them they really need that accessibility that they're maybe not getting at the college level because we wouldn't expect that at the college level. So I don't know exactly what the question was, but I think maybe I answered it. So, all right, very good.
Hi, I'm Amy, and I have only been here, I've been tutoring on the Portland campus for a couple of years with the graduate students in the Sassy Center over there. But last year was my first year teaching English comp and then professional writing in the spring here at UNE anyway. And this is my first experience with Sassy over on the Biddeford campus, and I worked with Eric last year when I was teaching 110 and learned a little bit about what goes into being a tutor for these students, but I'm excited to get to know them, and I think that one-on-one work is so important and can be really transformative for them to have someone gunning for them and, dispelling myths, and it's a really fun relationship. Also getting to know, like, oh, you work at Starbucks, or oh, your grandmother died last week, and so that's going to affect how, your mood is today, and all those things you don't necessarily get to when you're standing up in front of 20 students. So I'm looking forward to building those relationships.
Thanks. I'm Eric. I'm in my second year as the developmental writing supervisor here, and actually in the second year of my tutoring career as well. I started as a first year composition instructor, and before that I started as a guy who was, I'm really, an American Studies scholar, and I just teach writing to make a living, and it turned out that after 2 decades that I identified myself as finally somebody who was a composition instructor and writing studies researcher and all of those kind of things, but not tutor, right? And I've had complex relationships with writing centers over the years at every university I've ever been to. First at George Washington University, it was like, we do have a writing center, but you can't send your students there. What do you mean you can't send your students there? That's what you are for. You're the first year writing instructor, right? We've capped your classes at 20 so that you have time to meet with all of them. And really? Wow, that's a complex thing. And
Wow.
so I'm not sure which finger went up, but that was my attitude towards them at that point. And then, I came to UNE, and Megan and Jack were here, and Megan was my tutor in the early days of 011, and we had a hard time, right, trying to make that work. And it wasn't because neither one of us had a bad attitude or anything like that. It was just, how do we make this work? What's the communication going to be? Can you help coach the reading? I don't have time to help coach the reading because I can't do the reading, right? And I'm like, wow, this is really hard. And I think I was I don't know what the right word is, maybe insensitive to the conditions that people were working on under here. And I think at this meeting last year, I walked in and I did the smartest thing I think I've ever done, which is not to talk, and was instead to listen for a little bit and say, so what has been like over here? How does this relationship look from your point of view? And what I heard was, I'm supporting 4 or 5 different writing instructors. I have half an hour with each student. I don't have any time, right? I can't keep up with the prep and all that. Okay, that's important. That matters. And so one of the things we did right away was to extend the session time from 30 minutes to 45 minutes for most students. However, if you're meeting in a group, up to an hour for 2 people, or 3, right? 1 hour and 15 minutes, just to give you some more time, right? And then we tried to reduce the number of faculty that people were supporting, and I think some of those things just made a big difference. And I started to understand, okay, so we've got a great group of people over here. We had fabulous conversations about tutoring philosophy in the first day, that echo the kind of things that we've been just talking about now. And I thought, this is going to be really great. I'm excited to work with this community of people. And as I said, missed it coming in, but we're coming off our, Megan, you said it, our best year tutoring ever, right? And I think it is probably one of ours. And it turns out that our portfolio assessment last year, our mainstreaming students performed, right, indistinguishably from the 110 without. Right? In fact, better, although not statistically better on some measures, right, than the students who didn't have tutoring at all. So very, very proud.
That's right. That's excellent.
of the work that we're doing.
You should feel proud.
Yeah, for all of us. Who are our students? There's two pools of 011 students, although they all get kind of bunched together. We have students who are maybe one level below English 110 students. They have some literacy challenges, maybe around writing process. They may have some complications in terms of like structure. They may be wedded to formulas. They may, have a kind of narrow mindset in terms of like the flexibility that it takes to actually write when you're thinking about complex ideas. Some difficulties handling text, but they're pretty close, right? And with that one little bit of tutoring and some individual attention, we can do pretty well with them. I think it's important to think about that pool of students as, just give them a push, give them some support, right? But also let them take control, right? I think that's one of the most important things with that group of students in particular is by the end of the semester, you want them driving the tutoring sessions as much as possible and wean them off of that support, so when they go forward, right, they can do it for themselves. And then we have a second pool of developmental writers who would have been asked to take a non-graduation credit-bearing writing tutorial in order to address what were understood in the past as their deficiencies: grammar, structure, reading comprehension, all of those kind of things. And I think one of the things that we're doing as we're moving into this new version of serving that stretch group of writers is that we're taking the same learning outcomes for English 110 and we are spreading them out over 2 semesters instead of 1. We are giving them assignments that are on par with those that are going to happen in English 110. We're just giving them more time to complete them and more support along the way. So I think the big message for that group of writers, which they will never have heard before and which they will have a hard time believing, is you are ready for college writing, right? If we can, avoid thinking of them as having deficits that they need to correct, and instead, make that kind of move where we're saying, you're starting the same journey that all of the rest of your colleagues here in the first year are starting, which is learning a new form of writing, right? You are beginning your journey for the advanced literacy skills that you will need over the course of your career here at UNE and beyond. And we will pick up and clean up and fix some of the things that need to be fixed over time. But really the message is you're not in any different place. You're capable of doing this, right? And we're going to challenge you with ideas, and we want to hear what you have to say. I think we as instructors and tutors, right, in 011 are in a great place to help students see themselves in that way. Instructor tutor, right? Classic tutoring pedagogy says we're here to improve, the writer, right, not the paper. Classic tutoring pedagogy says it should be almost entirely student-directed. And we're kind of in a hybrid situation, right? We're not classic writing-centered tutoring because we are a class with learning objectives, right? And we are also supporting the learning objectives in another writing class at the same time. And that means that at some points we have to be more directive than a classic tutor would be. And we have the benefit of 14, 15, 16, meetings with students over the course of the semester so that we can actually have a trajectory in what we're doing. So I think as we start getting into the swing of September, figuring out what your students are going to need, right, and then figuring out, so what do we want to do in the 8 weeks or 9 weeks that are left in the semester with them? How are we going to meet their needs at the same time that you're helping them, right, work on the things that are happening in 110? That would be a great thing to try to figure out, right, over that first month as we're getting to know who these students are. Speaking of getting to know who these students are, we have 2 grants that we're working on this semester that allow us to study the 2 SAS 011 populations in some detail. We have research projects that are asking students, first of all, what beliefs about writing are you entering, right, UNE with? And if you see this Literate Beliefs and Practices survey in front of you, you can see these are the 50 questions that we're going to ask them. All of our first year students. Jen, do you have one?
Yes.
Yeah, Kim?
I had it somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oops. Oh, that's
Sorry,
okay. Sorry.
I gave it
The
away.
next thing you know, get me in trouble.
Detention.
I need the other one too, or this one too.
There you go. So these are the questions we're going to be asking students at the beginning of the semester in 011, at the end of the semester for the mainstreaming versions of 011, and then at the end of next semester for the stretch version of 011. And you'll see we want to know about their writing process, we want to know about their metacognitive approaches, we want to know what rules they're bringing, right? So this will be something that each of your students will have in their email box as an invitation to complete this survey, and we'd like them to do that in their first session of 011. If you decide, however, that you really want to use that first session for rapport building and relationship building, you can ask them to do that as homework, right, between their first session and second session. It's something that they can do online. You got it, Jen?
You're, I assume, tracking who's doing what there. Is it going to be like, will you tell us, hey, this person didn't do it yet, can you remind them, kind of thing?
Yeah, we can do that. They'll have individual invitations, and we can see who has, their survey too lets us see who's filled it out and who hasn't. Yeah. The research moves on after we do this survey. In the second semester, after they've completed English 110 in 011 or English 122 in 011, we're going to select the smaller group of them for focus groups, and Jen and Megan are going to help us run those focus groups and ask students about their experiences to get a stronger sense of what happened in 011 and how it works for them and what they think they've learned, and whether or not they're applying what they learned in 110 and 011 in other writing situations in their second semester. And we're going to take a smaller subset of those and do half-hour interviews with individuals. So we should get and look at some of their portfolios and writing samples from other courses. So we should not only be able to tell whether or not they think they're applying the skills, right, that they've learned, but hopefully we should be able to prove it by looking at their writing as well. So it's a pretty exciting time. We'll get to know a lot about our students in a way that we haven't been able to do before, both in a quantitative way, but in what I'm really excited about in a qualitative way. We can hear the story of the course from their point of view. So, speaking of hearing the story of the course from their point of view, Megan, can we watch your video?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It might take me a second to find it.
Yeah.
So we're going to distribute this in the first session of,
Students will have a link in their email,
okay,
right? We want to do electronic collection of that, and so you can either ask them to do it in this sitting. I haven't taken this myself, and maybe what I'll do is I'll send a link out to all of you so that you can take the survey, and then we'll scrub the data later, but to see how long it's going to take, and so you can decide whether or not you really want to use maybe the half hour that it might take them. It's 50 questions, I'm not sure. I think there's no password. Maybe if you, yeah.
Is this something you're going to use, Eric?
Yeah, the button on the right there, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm guessing about a half hour.
Can they take it in more than one session, or it has to be?
I think it has to be completed in one session. I'm a little reluctant to allow them to do it in multiples. Yeah. Any other questions about the survey? And again, I think it doesn't matter to me whether or not you have them do it sitting there right in front of you. If you'd rather use that time to build a relationship, I think that's important as well.
But sometime during the first week you want this.
Right. Yeah, we wanted to measure what they're doing before the impact of instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, is it in your channel?
No.
Is it on the SASE website?
It is.
Oh, I know where it is.
How do I go there?
It's on your website.
It's on Eric Drown, one word, .une portfolio .org, right? ORG.
Yeah, I think so. Is this your WordPress? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Did you take that picture?
I don't know if we have
No.
speakers.
It's a really cool picture.
We do. We may need to turn them up.
It's on mute right
Speakers. I don't know where that will do.
Let's try playing it. The music comes in a little bit, right? Later?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Writing Lab is just an opportunity to work one-on-one with someone outside your English composition class. It's basically another set of eyes, not a hole on your English composition page that can really help you out. It's really beneficial. As a reviewer, I looked at more details, more in depth. I really dissected it.
Other times we read the draft that I have and we break down the ideas, we build topic sentences,
So I can really help you dissect writings, readings,
you develop your ideas,
do pre-writes, editing,
make more complex sentences.
make my
He'd be real happy to know that we're looking at his portrait like
I
that,
know.
right?
Any suggestions? Should we back it up?
Back it up a little bit, maybe, yeah.
Pieces,
make my transition smoother.
set up pictures and then we like analyze them loud and go over it as them. The writing lab helped me by thinking of the resources that I need.
It really helped me because in high school I wasn't the best English writer.
It also made sure I was on track.
And then I learned that high school and college writing is a lot different.
Also using individual other than my professor and my peers who could read my essays and really break down my ideas.
So this was a great transition stage for me.
I had to have more complex thinking than what I was used to. The text and the essays that we were assigned are more challenging than we would expect that you're used to.
That really helped me get more in depth with my reading.
I had so much to really go through them and understand.
It really helped me overcome my English comprehension. Personally, I believe that everyone should take the writing lab.
I would recommend it to all freshmen.
High school and college is a lot different.
Where in high school you can think on paper than before and get an A on it.
Even if you think you're good at English, there's still a lot more that you should learn, a lot more that you should know.
You really need to set down time, draft, revise, how it was going to do work.
I wouldn't necessarily, if you take it, think, oh, I'm bad at English.
I think that everyone in English, no matter how well of a reader you are, should definitely take this opportunity to join it.
It really helps you with many other classes besides your English composition class.
It just gives you another opportunity to make sure you're doing the best opportunity.
And it made me really successful first year college student.
What do you think?
Are there a lot of students who sign up that haven't been identified, that they see a video like this and think, well, I'm
There-
gonna,
There have been in the past.
yeah,
This year we have a bubble of developmental writers. We have 200 developmental writers on campus out of a class of 820, including transfer students.
Wow.
Right, so about a quarter of our students this semester are one of our two developmental writing populations. So in the past, there's been room for students who want to opt in, who are kind of on that bubble, and we've invited people in our placement model who are kind of on the line to come to the class. This semester, we have room for maybe about 5,
Wow.
right? And that will be because students that are assigned to you, either will drop or will, but it'll have to be quick. So basically, we don't have room.
So we can't really advertise it this semester.
Yeah. But this might be a video you might want to show in the first session or first, week of class, and maybe we can send a link to the video out to everybody if you want.
I actually included it in my contact email when I was setting up the appointment, so thank you. It was great. And both of you. Because I thought it would be a good, kind of set some groundwork for this is the kind of stuff we'll do, and this is what you can expect, kind of thing. So I think that's that we really don't really know yet what to expect. So.
And it's nice for them to hear it from the students rather than us telling them how good it is for them.
Yeah.
In the past, students who have walked into 011 in the first weeks of why am I here? I don't belong here. I'm a good writer. My English teacher said so. I did bad on the SAT, but that's because I didn't try or because I have test anxiety. That shouldn't happen this year. First of all students have been notified back in July about their status. We worked with them over orientation, right, to field some of those concerns, and we also have a mechanism for them to challenge their writing placement and move up if they can show proficiency in ways that we couldn't capture with their SAT writing score. And we've had about 25 or 30 students actually challenge their writing placement this year, and virtually all of them moved up, either out of stretch into mainstreaming or out of mainstreaming into 110 without support, or in a few cases even right out of stretch into English composition. And you can only imagine how miserable those students would have been taking it over 2 semesters. So a lot of that kind of attitudinal I don't belong here stuff may not happen this year, right? But it's something to be prepared for.
How did you assess that, Eric? What they had to give a certain sample or something?
Well, what we did was we looked at their high school transcripts and we looked at their grades in their 11th and 12th grade English classes. We actually sent them a version of the Malcolm Gladwell small change assignment that Josh Pahigian did a few years ago in English 110. Asked them to read Gladwell, asked them to look at the assignment, and then take a survey on, have you ever read anything like Malcolm Gladwell before? Have you ever had to write anything about it? How hard was it to read? Are you confident that you could do an assignment like this? What has your reading been and writing been about mostly over the course of your high school career? And then we looked at samples. We invited them to send analytical writing samples, up to 3 of them, and many of them did send 2 or 3 of them. So we have a pretty good look at what they are. In fact, we're going to move to that mostly as our placement mechanism next year. Not looking at samples for everybody, but that transcript analysis survey, and maybe we'll establish one kind of cutoff above which you go into English 110 using SATs, and then after that, we'll probably have a pool of 200-300 that we'll have to kind of look through and sort through this way. So we're hoping we're going to have more accurate placement.
That's great.
A few things that are new this year in other situations. I think every composition student will be doing a portfolio this year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things students are going to have problems with is navigating the WordPress ePortfolio system. I want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not our job to help them with the digital skills that they need in order to do the portfolio. It can be our job to help them with the reflection skills on the portfolio and to help them think about which things they might want to put up there, but not to do WordPress troubleshooting for them. And the reason why we're not going to do that is because Jesse Miller and his Digital Spaces lab and the undergraduates who are going to be staffing that lab are going to be available for students to do that. And so, Megan, maybe under that ePortfolio home thing there, why don't you go to the ePortfolio help and see that DigiSpaces link up there on the blue?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I think you just have to click DigiSpaces. There's going to be a Mac lab with 28 computers in there with undergraduates who know how to use WordPress. We'll be able to teach them how to upload files and how to format fonts and how to create pages and all of that stuff. So if students are struggling with that, refer them over to the DigiSpaces lab. Maybe, I'll send links around to this website so everybody has it available for them. But let's not spend tutoring time, working on this with them. Let's spend it working on the rhetorical parts.
Are all the English 110 doing ePortfolio? I thought they were doing portfolio, but
Yeah, but I don't think they have to do
ePortfolio.
Okay.
portfolio.
All right.
So
I was so lost. I didn't know what was going on.
I'm not sure though, cause I mean, I know the e-portfolio is a new thing for the 122 students.
All
they'll
122
do-
students will do
right,
that.
so
Oh.
everyone who's doing
But I don't
stretch
think 110
will do it, but
has
I'm
to.
not sure about 110.
All right, we can
Yeah.
find that out this afternoon
Yeah.
when we go over to Marcel.
Yeah.
It wasn't
But
in
everybody
any of the
will have a
paperwork
portfolio though,
that
so
Michael
that's
sent.
Yeah.
So.
different.
Okay. All right, so but that, you know, if you end up with students saying, hey, I gotta do this electronic thing, I don't know how to use WordPress, this is the place to send them rather than to spend our time doing that. So, on the other hand, if they are bringing in papers from other courses, you know, the biology lab has some papers in their first year. If people are taking EMV, the environmental studies classes, with Megan's dad, there'll be lots of papers and complex reading things in there. And so they're going to be encountering writing at different places. Some of them are taking explorations courses, sometimes 200 level
Oh
ones.
yeah, some of the explorations are kind of killer for
Right.
developmental students.
And so invite your students to bring those papers in and work on them a little bit, because it's really going to help them see the connections between what's happening in 110 and 011 and their other coursework in a way that will be really, really useful for them in a way that not every freshman will get. So that's okay, right? Everything doesn't have to be 110 centric. I spent a whole session working with a kid on his biology lab report, you know, one session, and it was the most animated and that kid was that semester. I think he learned a lot, you know, about, oh, I'm going to write like a biologist, even though it's, you know, looks a little different and the sourcing is different. The idea behind sourcing works exactly the same. Like, oh, yeah, that's great. So,
It's actually a really cool idea to do that in like 110.
Yeah.
Have them bring in somebody from another class.
yep. And since the writing is going to be spaced out, you know, that could be a standing 10 or 15 minutes. You know, once a week maybe, or once every other week. Who's got
Yeah.
something going on this week? You know, or even like, how do you write on an exam? Maybe this is the place to pull out the 5-paragraph essay, right? And how that's going to work for you there. And that could be something again that could build some of that transfer.
Eric, is this DigiSpace, is this on the UNE website? Yeah, this is the UNE website?
This is the UNE Portfolios website.
Okay.
So if you see the thing at the top, uneportfolios.org is the home for that.
I'm sure I will need to access this at some point.
And they have, you know, Jesse and Michael have made some tutorials or gathered some tutorials, so this is starting to develop and it will mature over the year. We have two important logistic things to do. We have the biggest tutoring population ever, both instructors and students, and so we have a space crunch. Right? We want as many students to have their writing support sessions in this building because of the crossover effect of they come in, they work with us, but they see the center filled with people getting tutoring for chem or biology, and sometimes it's like you walk them over to Carrie and you get them, you know, set up with, you know, something for their big, you know, chem exam that's coming up, or you, right? We've been able to demonstrate that once students are in here, they actually come back. They use our services more. So as many of them as we can get scheduled into our space here as we can, we want to be able to do that.